Hello and welcome to World News on the Hour here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy says that talks with European partners on possible peacekeeping troop deployments to Ukraine will now continue on a weekly basis. He made the comments following an initial meeting on Friday between high-ranking French, British and Ukrainian military officials in Kyiv. The delegates from London and Paris represented the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a group of European countries supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia. Local media report that the mission format would involve forces on the ground, in the air and at sea, as well as additional air defences. Zelenskyy said discussions on the makeup of the mission should be concluded within about a month. 19 people were killed and more than 60 injured in Russian missile and drone attacks on Kryvyi Rih on Friday night. 9 children were identified among the dead. An Iskander-M ballistic missile hit a residential neighbourhood, setting several buildings on fire and causing severe damage. More than 40 people, including a 3-month-old infant, remain hospitalised. Shortly after the attack, the Russian Defence Ministry released a statement claiming that up to 85 Ukrainian and foreign officers had been killed in the strike. Kryvyi Rih, Zelenskyy's hometown, remains a frequent target of Russian missile strikes. The city, with a population of about 660,000, is the second largest in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and lies roughly 70 kilometers from the front lines. Local residents in Kryvyi Rih described the moment of the attack and the destruction it caused.
I did not see the flash, I only heard the explosion. All the windows and glass fell on me, but I was not hurt, surprisingly. There were dead children laying there, crying parents. It was horrible. And there was the crater with smoke coming out of it where it hit. Some of the metal bits fell here, some ricocheted here and broke the glass.
There was an explosion, blast. The children's playground was hit. The blast moved from there, or I don't know where. We were lying in bed when the blast hit. It hit the TV as well. There was no time to get scared.
We did not understand what was going on.
We were all covered in glass.
President Zelenskyy offered his condolences to relatives of those killed in the Kryvyi Rih attack during his nightly address. He said Moscow was prevaricating over the ceasefire and there was only one cause of the war: Russia's desire to kill Ukrainians.
My condolences to their families and loved ones. Many others have been injured and buildings have been damaged. The missile struck an area right next to residential buildings, hitting a children's playground and ordinary streets. A ceasefire could have already been reached, but Putin rejected it. Since March the 11th, Moscow has refused to agree to a ceasefire. They need this war, and it is clear that Russia will not be forced into peace through mere conversations or waiting. I'm grateful to everyone in the world who helps make diplomacy and the efforts for a just peace effective. We count on America, Europe and other partners on their ability to put pressure on the real cause of this war, Russia's desire to destroy and kill.
The U.S. intends to wait and see whether Russia is serious about peace or not, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said during a press conference in Brussels. Rubio visited Belgium to participate in a 2-day NATO foreign ministers meeting, which wrapped up on Friday.
We're going to wait and see. The Russians know our position in terms of wanting to end the war. And we will know from their answers very soon whether they are serious about proceeding with real peace or whether this is a delay tactic. It's a delay tactic. The president's not interested in that. If this is dragging things out, President Trump's not going to fall into the trap of endless negotiations about negotiations. We will know soon enough whether or not Russia's serious about peace. If they are, that'll be great. Then we can move towards peace. If they're not, then we'll have to reevaluate where we stand and what we do moving forward about it. But we'll be in no different a position than we are today, or we were when he took office. He wanted to know early in his administration, is peace possible? We're testing to see if the Russians are interested in peace. Their actions, not their words, their actions will determine whether they're serious or not, and we intend to find that out sooner rather than later.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski says that US President Donald Trump has reassured NATO leaders of America's continued commitment to Article 5. Sikorski added that Trump will also attend the NATO summit set to take place this June in The Hague.
It's good that the new US government has realized that allies are an asset and not a burden, as they were an asset, and I said that during my talks, when for the first time, and thank God, so far for the last time, the alliance had invoked Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which was for the benefit of the United States. We, as Poland, had no national interest in Afghanistan. We responded out of friendship and solidarity as an ally towards the United States. Yes, President Trump confirmed to other leaders that it still applies. And from what we have heard, President Trump will be present at the NATO summit in The Hague.
There will be new priorities in the EU budget known as the Multi-Annual Financial Framework. For the next 7 years, more funding will be allocated towards defence. Sasha Farbach has the story.
The MFF, essentially, that is the European Union's budget, massive tool used for everything of investment across the European Union, critical for member states. Now, it is done in 7-year cycles. Now, the next one coming up will be for 2027 onwards. Now, two of the co-rapporteurs, those people sponsoring this in the European Parliament, that's part of the institutions that need its approval, are involved, and they were in Warsaw, and we got a chance to understand more what are the priorities and what the European Parliament would like to see in any new budget. Now, we heard from things like agriculture, but also defense.
Europe should make sure that we invest in research, innovation, acquisition of equipment so that the national armed forces have the equipments which they need, which should be modern, at small unit price, same equipments in member states so that our armed forces increase their interoperability.
And also, speaking to us, the MEP, Mr. Morrison, told me that very much there needs to be flexibility in this budget, that there needs to be potentially even a higher increase on that. Now, we're still a fair ways away from having that decided. It still needs to go through the different institutions, European Commission, the European Parliament, and of course the member states. But one thing is clear, he talked very much about flexibility, of there being a need to make sure that there are events that are unexpected. He mentioned COVID, for instance, or Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, that there needs to be more flexibility for any kind of budget. And of course, what happens here in this region, Poland, Romania, those have been benefiting very much from European funds.
The budget has to correspond to the needs on the ground. There are more needs. The people expect Europe to do more. It needs to have the tools. The budget is an essential tool, so it's clear that the budget will have to increase.
Ultimately, it is an important tool for all of the European Union, but getting to the finish line in agreement will still be some time to wait for. Sasha Farbach, TVP World in Warsaw.
Following Donald Trump's set of unprecedented tariffs imposed on all US trading partners, French President Emmanuel Macron urges French manufacturers to suspend recent and upcoming investments in the US. Macron spoke to the representatives of industries most affected by the new tariff measures, together with Prime Minister François Bayrou on Friday. The French president warned that the response to the tariffs should not be set out in hope of negotiating exemptions or concessions, stressing that it must be agreed upon from a European level. Macron also said that if major European players started making billion-dollar investments in the American economy at this time, it would send the wrong message. Trump announced sweeping tariffs on goods from countries all across the world on April the 2nd, which he called Liberation Day.
So, if you look at that, China, first row.
Elon Musk's social media platform X faces up to a $1 billion fine for allegedly violating the EU's Digital Services Act, the New York Times reports. The EU began formal proceedings against X in 2023, warning that selling verification check marks can be misleading to users and in breach of the DSA. The EU is also currently leading an investigation into X content moderation, under the suspicion that its limited scope enabled hate speech and disinformation to spread on the platform. Aside from potential fines, the platform might also be ordered to change some of its features to comply with the EU law. Fines under the DSA can be as high as 6% of the company's revenue, and, according to the New York Times, EU officials are reportedly considering calculating X's fine based on the combined revenue of all Elon Musk-owned companies, including SpaceX. Demonstrators in South Korea were seen celebrating a decision by the country's constitutional court to uphold the impeachment of ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol. Thousands of people took to the streets of Seoul celebrating the constitutional court's decision to uphold the impeachment of ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol. Crowds gathered near City Hall, singing along to live bands and cheering on speeches at a nighttime rally. Yoon was ousted from his post as president after declaring martial law and deploying troops to parliament, claiming to be combating political deadlock and what he calls anti-state forces, sympathetic to North Korea. Well, that brings us to an end to this bulletin, but we will be back on the hour. See you then. Bye now.